Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. Sorry we're a few minutes late. Yes, here we are. Happy holidays. So I'm Robin Withrow-Wong, and if you've watched my episodes before, I'm all about food and cooking good food that's also good for our health. So today we're going to focus on making some swaps that in recipes that we really like, that we can still enjoy that food, especially those holiday specials, but also we can improve our health, because it's always this balancing act, right? Of how do we, really eat the foods we love, yet still get good health. So what I want to do first so today we're going to make jam dot cookies. But before I get there, I want to go through some lists of foods that I think will get your brain turning about how you can make these swaps and actually have healthier meals, whether it be, a casserole or it be a baked good or whatever it is for you, because I know that everybody has their special holiday foods. So I don't know if you can see the slides yet. Are they up?
There you go.
Okay, perfect. There they are. So easy swaps to making recipes healthier. Okay, so this is the idea. Don't give up your favorites. You don't have to. People always think, oh, to eat healthy, I have to give up my favorite foods. No, you don't have to do that, okay? But there are ways to reduce fat content, which is really important, because we know saturated fats contribute to heart health, negative heart health. They also contribute to insulin resistance. They also add that little added fluff around our bellies sometimes, because fats are really high in calories, right? So we're going to figure out ways to still have the texture and some of the properties of a fat, but without all the negative stuff. And then we're going to talk about how to reduce some of those refined sugars. So there are so many good products on the market these days. Old school, when I learned to cook back in 4-H cooking, that's how I learned how to cook. I grew up on a farm. We used just plain white sugar. That's what was available. You had either white sugar or brown sugar, right? And you'd use them in your baked goods. Now there's a plethora of different types of sugars, and they're less refined, and they actually have a little bit of nutritional value in some of them. Things like date sugar, right? Or coconut sugar, or monk fruit sugar. There's a bunch of different types you can use that aren't as refined. Now, is it still sugar? Of course it is. But sometimes we can use less of it and have a little bit of nutritional value, and that's still a little bit better, isn't it? So lowering sodium content, we're going to talk about that. As Americans, we eat way too much sugar. Did you know that every day the amount we're allowed to eat to have good health is 2,300 milligrams? That is literally a teaspoon a day. And so we eat way over that. Anytime you open a package, you're probably way over your sodium content, okay? Because canned foods and packaged foods, frozen foods, typically all have sodium in them. So just be aware of that. If you are watching your heart health, a low sodium diet, or blood pressure, low sodium diet is really important. So it's even 1,500 milligrams is what we want to have you on. So just remember that it's hard to know how much is a teaspoon as you're eating these, and because it's coming through these foods throughout the day. So where you can cut it, do that. Okay. Increasing the amount of fiber in some of these foods is really the trick. So whether it is your scrambled eggs in the morning, because eggs have 0 fiber, so you want to add some vegetables to them to get fiber, or whether it's a baked item that's using egg, you could substitute that out with a flax egg, and now you have some omega-3s and some fiber. So we'll talk more about that. And then really trying to avoid those added preservatives and additives that come in. If you make it from home, you have control over what you're eating, okay, and that's really true. We don't always have time, I know, but this is where, when you learn to read your labels, which I've done an episode on that, and we can go back and watch that if you can, so you really understand what you're taking in, okay? So our next slide will show us some of the substitutions. So dairy is used a lot, okay? Dairy is referred to, as dairy milk, even goat milk. And the thing about dairy is that it's very high in saturated fat, whether it's milk or whether it is cheese, sour cream, butter, all those things are dairy products, right? And oh, I know they taste so good. Okay, they do. The thing is, they're not necessarily good for our health. So I just want you to be aware of that. So if we can swap them out, does that mean you can never use them again? Of course not. But if we can swap them out occasionally, you're just reducing the amount you're taking in without suffering too much, right? And so there's a lot of substitutions. There are so many good plant-based milks out there now. Always read your labels because they're not all created equal. Some actually are sweetened, some actually have oils in them. So read your labels and see. But you know, almond milk, cashew milk, those are both from nuts, so they will have a little bit of saturated fat, but they also have some fiber because they come from a nut. Okay, so just remember that, and some vitamins. Soy milk, oat milk, there's rice. There's so many different types. So just pick the one you like. I use them, many of them. I use them in many different aspects. Like they have different textures. Like today we're going to use almond milk, but I also sampled this recipe using oat milk, because they're a little thicker compared to, say, a rice milk that is more like a non-fat milk texture. So when I'm making mashed potatoes, and yeah, you can eat mashed potatoes and still be healthy. It's all about how you make them. So when I'm making mashed potatoes, I'll use an oat milk because it's thicker, okay? And you know, I just blend them up and I add some garlic, and you don't need all of the cream and other things that go in them, all right? So cheeses is an obvious one. There's a lot of cheeses made from nuts, not necessarily low calorie, but they definitely bring something more positive with them in the sense that they're not just full of saturated fat. They have some, but they have less. They typically have a little bit of fiber too. And you can make your own cheese pretty easily. You know, I use tofu in my lasagnas, and it looks just like ricotta. Okay, there's this way, you just got to mix it up a little bit. Creamers, you have to just read the labels. I mean, I get asked about that a lot, okay? So those are just dairy substitutions. I think on the next slide I'll show a few more possibly about what they are. So other substitute sauces use dairy a lot. Oddly enough, cauliflower is really good. You can blend it up into a sauce, as is soy yogurt, but it has a lot of sugar in it, as is tofu, the silken tofu. So again, all tofus aren't created equal. You have a very firm tofu that I use in stir fries and scrambles, and then I have the silken tofu that I use in sauces because it's a creamier texture, and that's what we're going for, right? So it's understanding these foods and how to substitute them in. And I know I'm going through them really fast, so I just want to give you guys some things to brainstorm on. Again, cream cheese, you can buy a non-dairy one. You know, ice cream, I know that's a hard one for a lot of people. Sorbet is equally sweet, and you can get some fruit as well. You know, buttermilk, you can make your own out of whatever plant-based milk you're using by taking a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and mixing it into 1 cup and let it sit for a little bit, and it'll give you that sour texture, that sour flavor, okay? Okay, I have a question coming up. Allergic to nuts. Is any of the nut milks more concentrated than the nuts themselves? If I was allergic to nuts, I would avoid the nut milk, okay? You might try a soy milk because it's more of a bean, okay? A flax milk is from a seed. So typically if you have a nut allergy, you can do the seeds. So, so a hemp or a flax seed would probably be a better alternative. And there, you know, I think hopefully that answers your question, okay? What's that? Hemp? It's kind of a mild flavor. The question was, what does hemp taste like? It's kind of a mild flavor, yeah, and it's definitely a seed, and it has oils in it, you know, and so it got silky flavor, that silky type of texture. Okay, so experiment and see what you like. But if you have an allergy, I'd stay away from the nuts just to be safe. Okay, coconut milk is the one I would certainly stay away from. Coconut products. You know, you think you're doing something very healthy, but they are very high in saturated fat, okay? And if you're trying to avoid saturated fat, that's one you probably want to avoid, okay? You know, certainly avoid the coconut milk. You can get away with a little bit if you buy the reduced fat, but certainly avoid the coconut oils because it's very refined and high in saturated fat. Okay, so now we're on oil. So you already heard my blurb on coconut oil, okay? Salad dressings. These are just the store-bought ones are a vehicle of oil and sugar, okay? And we just accept that that's how they have to taste. And I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily true, okay? So, you know, there's a ton of different flavored vinegars you can use. One of my favorite go-tos is getting Dijon mustard, mixing in some vinegar until it gets thin, a little bit of water, and using that, okay? Pouring that on. It's really zesty if you like that. You can use tahini. Tahini is sesame seeds that are blended up. So you get that kind of oily texture, so it sticks to your leaves, but then you actually put in, you know, turmeric and all these other seasonings in there that give it all the flavor. And, you know, it works beautifully as a dressing, but yet now you have some fiber coming with the tahini and some nutrients versus just plain refined oil, okay? Same thing with nut butters. Right, you can certainly thin those out and mix those up. There's so many good recipes on their internet for those. Frying, this is one of the go-tos, and I'll show you at the end some of my top go-tos for substitutions to start your better health. Every recipe tells you saute in 2 tablespoons of oil, almost. Saute your onion and garlic, or whatever it is if you're cooking. Almost every baking recipe has oil. And just know that you can saute just fine with vegetable broth or just plain water. You know, it works just fine. Just cook it a little longer. Add a little bit more as it evaporates until it gets to be the charred or the type of texture you like. Practice with it. I work with my clients with this all the time, and they're amazed. And so off the top, you've already lightened that meal, okay, just by taking that oil out, all right? So it's a really easy way that you can start lightening your meals and never even miss it, okay? Never even miss it. Baking, you know, you need to, with baking, it's more of a chemistry experiment, right? So you want to follow a recipe that has been practiced, okay? Because the measurements make a difference. So, but you can find those. So often I don't use oil, and so I don't use oil in my recipes. The recipe I'm going to show you today has no oil. I'll use nut butters, I'll use applesauce, I'll use date paste for the sweetener, I'll use banana. There's a bunch of different things that work very well without using oil. And again, you've just automatically lightened it. Because oils, they are literally 9 calories per gram versus a protein or carb that are 4 calories per gram. So you can see if you're overeating oils, you're doubling your calories. So if weight is an issue for you, these are really easy tricks, right, to start lightening things up that just lower your calorie intake throughout the day, okay? So my next slide, again, some more baking substitutions. Eggs, I'm going to show you today we're using flax. And you know, flax is just a seed ground up. So the little seed is actually, I don't know if you can see it. So you can actually see the seed. It's a hard seed. It's hard to digest that, okay? So when you get it ground, it definitely, okay, there we go. And there's all types of different ones. You could actually buy the seeds and grind it yourself if you want to. But they work beautifully as an egg in a recipe, okay? So, you know, and it tells you on the back. This is how they're just, you know, it tells you on the back. You do 1 tablespoon of flax to 3 tablespoons. You whisk it up until let it sit for a little bit, and it literally is the consistency of an egg. It's pretty amazing. So, and flax is very high in omega-3s, and it's high in fiber. So it's like, you know, every food should bring something with it. It has to earn its spot on your plate, okay, and in your recipes. So just keep that in mind. So, moving on to some more baking substitutions. Butter is a big one, right? You could easily say, I'm going to get away from the dairy and go into the vegan butters. But again, they're high in oils. Now, they're lower in saturated fat, but they're typically higher in the mono and polyunsaturated fats. Are those better? Of course they are. But do each of those, the saturated and the and the unsaturated, you know, are they created equal as far as calories? Yes. Okay, so they're a little bit better for your heart health and your cholesterol numbers, but they're not better for your waistline necessarily, okay? So just use them sparingly and just know that, okay? Sweeteners, we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's a whole bunch of different ones. They're still sugars, Okay, there's still sugars. And as Americans, we eat so much sugar. And so just be aware of it. So if you're going to eat it, let's see if we can get a little more nutritional value in it, okay, and get some of these things that possibly have, you have the sweetness, but also have a few nutrients too. Thickeners, chia seeds are great, and we talked about salad dressings. If you want it a little thicker, those little chia seeds, again, they have omega-3s in them. You throw in a couple tablespoons, and it turns into like a gel. You can actually make a pudding out of them. And so they'll thicken up. I throw them in my oatmeal in the morning. And so it thickens up my oatmeal. I cook them in with that. And I do my whole flaxseed, my chia seeds, the whole rigmarole. So it's not just oats. It's oats with a punch, okay? All right, so the next slide will show you salt. I've already mentioned how salt, we overeat it. And people will tell me, I don't like to eat healthy because the food tastes so bland. I promise you, if you give it 10 days, your taste buds change and things will start to taste too salty, too oily, too sugary, okay? But it takes about 10 days of really kind of backing off of it for your taste buds to start adjusting, okay? But there's some things you can do. Miso, also a fermented food, super awesome, fermented food because that makes it kind of a probiotic. It does not spike studies have shown it does not spike your sodium levels like salt does, yet it gives you that salty sort of flavor and that umami flavor. So I've really started leaning into miso a lot, where I'll just dilute it down into some water, and then I'll use that in my dish. And kind of back off the soy sauce a little bit and that sort of thing. So just know, you can buy reduced soy sauce, reduced salt. You can use coconut aminos. It has a little bit of salty flavor, but it's less. And then, honestly, use your spices. Use your spices. I mean, you'd be amazed. We over-salt things so we don't taste everything. But when you start backing off the salt and really figuring out the flavor profiles that you like, that's when your food comes alive, okay? That's when you really start enjoying it. So, there are so many great spices. Whether they're dried or they're fresh, it's completely up to you. Use them. Not only do they make your food taste good, they actually bring a lot of antioxidants and really healthful things into your diet, okay? So, let's see. My next slide is, so people always ask me, in the grocery line, wherever I am, so Robin, what if I wanted to start? What would be the top things that you would tell me to do? And so I thought, that might be something good to tell all of you, okay? The first thing is really ditch the dairy. Really start paying attention. I know, the audience is saying, no, not the dairy. But really, does it mean you can't ever have it? No. But, we overconsume it. We really do. I mean, it's hard to go out and get a meal that's prepared that doesn't have sort of butter and cheese and those things on it. And people will tell me all the time, I don't do much dairy. I don't drink milk. It's like, it sneaks in. Read your labels. Read your labels. It's in disguise. It comes under different terms, all right? It'll be casein or whey or various different things. And so look at the allergen list, and if it says milk, there's some sort of dairy in there. So start, be a super sleuth and start reading your labels. So really kind of scale back on that. Your health will improve, because that is our biggest vehicle of getting saturated fats into our diets as Americans. The second thing is saute with vegetable broth or water. Okay, that is like no oil. That is such a no-brainer for me. And I think it just really saves calories off the top, and your food actually does taste better. Yeah. You could use chicken broth, but the question was, can you use chicken broth? Of course you can. Typically, there's going to be fat in it. Okay, so you've got some fat in it, so you might as well use oil, right? I mean, so look and compare those two. So the vegetable broth, I buy the low sodium or no sodium, and and you can make your own. It's really easily. And water works fine too. Water works fine too. So it's really up to you what you want to use. But you could try it with the chicken broth and see how it works. The other one is a good replacement, and we didn't talk about whole grains a lot, but really starting by replacing your white pasta, your white rice with whole grains. Whole grains bring so many good vitamins to them. And I know if you type 2 diabetes, you're avoiding carbs, okay, I can tell you whole grain pasta is not going to spike you like a piece of bread will. Okay, it's kind of a myth, just so you know. I've experimented on my husband with this, okay? So, I mean, it does not spike you. And so just, really be aware of that. And so those whole grains do have a positive effect on you. So whole grain pastas and whole grain brown rice, there's a lot more fiber in them. And the next one is swap legumes for meat. Meat's another vehicle of saturated fat. We overeat meat a lot. And so legumes, what are they? They're your beans, your lentils, your peas, okay, soybeans, every type of bean. There's so many different types. Okay, choose one. If you don't like one, try another one. Okay, try to get at least a cup in a day. If you break it up, that's fine. Put them on your salad, put them in a soup, whatever it is. Lentils cook up really fast, and I put them in my spaghetti sauce. So there's so many ways. And they bring so much fiber with them. So meat has 0 fiber. Fiber's your friend if you're trying to manage your blood sugars, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to keep your GI system healthy. There's a reason we have a high rate of colon cancer in the US. We don't eat enough fiber, okay? And so really figure out ways you can get that into your diet. And the last thing is, add vegetables to everything. I mean, I like to say, I'm gonna veg it up, right? Because we don't eat them, especially leafy greens, okay? I buy these big things of spinach and I put handfuls of spinach into things because it just, it's just a way to get vegetables in. Soups are a good way. I throw them in. If you're doing egg whites in the morning, throw in some, there's no fiber, so throw in some vegetables into that, okay? And see if you can maybe scramble them without the butter. Okay, that's a big thing. And maybe ditch the processed meat. Okay, I should have added that one. That's a big one. Even before you get rid of maybe meat, get rid of the processed meats. They have been grouped, and they've been put in group 1 carcinogenic, okay? Meaning, what does that mean? It means they've been shown to cause cancer. Okay, and what are they? Deli meat, bacon, sausage, everybody's going, all the good stuff. I know, okay? But you also have to realize, and this is where it always comes up to you, how much do you want those foods versus how much do you want to be well? I mean, I have a saying with my clients, there's no food that tastes as good health feels, okay? All right, so I think we're ready now. We're gonna make jam dot cookies, all right? And this is a recipe by Darshana Thacker-Wendell. I got it out of Forks Over Knives, one of my favorite blogs that I like to go to. I like it because she does a really good job. And she doesn't use oils, she doesn't use a lot of salt, and she doesn't use eggs. So there's a lot of requirements I have for a recipe. So let's talk about this. Another thing is, a lot of people have an issue with gluten. So there's more, start seeing more and more gluten-free recipes, okay? So I'm gonna use some different flours that you might not be familiar with. And the reason is because they are gluten-free, and so it allows more people to eat them, okay, if you have a gluten issue. So we're gonna use, so it's basically gonna call for, we're gonna use oat flour. Now, if you have oatmeal in your pantry, and a really good blender, you can actually make your own. Just blend the heck out of it, or until it gets into a fine powder, and you can have oat flour. So I use it quite a bit, so I buy it. Sorghum flour might be new to you. It's a whole grain. It's actually from an ancient grain, and it's a gluten-free alternative. You see it a lot in gluten-free products. It's a very fine flour, and so I think this recipe mixes it because it gives a different texture, okay? So we're gonna use that. We're gonna use, I didn't bring it, but it does call for white refined sugar. So I haven't tried it yet. I made the recipe as it was, okay? It only calls for 6 tablespoons, but I was like, what I really wanna try, and I haven't done it yet, is either using coconut sugar or this is the date sugar, okay? Either one of these. I think they probably could be substituted. I haven't tried it yet, but that is something I'm gonna certainly do because I just like the fact that it would have a little bit more of nutrients in, like we talked about. So walnuts. We have some walnuts here. When I made these, I actually took them, I had whole walnuts, so then I chopped them, but these are just already chopped. You could make them finer if you choose to, that's an option. And then coconut flakes. The coconut is going to give it a little bit of, I'm not a coconut lover, to be honest, okay? I'm not a coconut lover, yet I liked it a lot in this recipe because it's not coconutty. It actually gives it, with all the other flavors, it gives it a little bit of dimension, and then it adds to the texture a little bit, okay? So it really worked. It really works. If you're not a coconut lover, trust me, I'm not either, yet it was okay. And it uses just a small amount. And then we're going to use the ground flax. This is going to be like the binder. We talked about that. And then, of course, baking powder, baking soda. I didn't bring it, but you can actually buy, here I got 2 baking sodas. You can actually buy baking powder that's aluminum free. And I typically do that because there have been some studies that have shown that aluminum can create cognitive issues. The research is out on it, okay? So, but you know, my attitude is if I don't have to consume it, why will I? And even with using aluminum foil, I just kind of avoid it because I was like, nah, be safe, right? Until the research is really solid on it. And then a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of sea salt, just a pinch of sea salt, okay? And then we're going to use some plant-based milk to mix it up, and then we're going to use some jam to make little dots. Now, I brought in some homemade plum jam that I made because I know it's really low in sugar because I made it. And then you can also buy Simply Fruit or something. And it's really, you could buy different flavors and have them all look different, okay? So let's start mixing it up, okay? It's really easy. You're gonna preheat your oven to 350. And then, you know, you're gonna get your baking sheet ready. All right, here we go. And I am really lazy, so I use parchment paper because I don't like to clean my pan, okay? You can use a Silipat, something like that if you're a baker. And then you don't have to actually add any fat to it either, right? So we're gonna get the pan ready, the oven's ready, and then we're gonna start adding in our stuff. So I actually pre-measured the flour. So we're gonna dump in our flour. Remember, we're doing a 3/4 cup oat flour, and I think ACC is always so organized and on it. They're going to have the recipe for you. I love working with them, and I love that they bring these cooking shows to you. And I'm going to add the sorghum flour, which is going to be a 1/2 cup. Okay, so those are mixed in. Hopefully you can see those, yeah? Okay, and then we're going to add in the 6 tablespoons of cane sugar. Now, I think you could even go less, honestly. They were pretty sweet, not overly sweet. Well, to my palate, they might not be sweet enough for you, but I bet you if you were to use some of these other sugars, they might be even a little more sweet with less. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 cup walnuts. So let's do that. You know, walnuts are really a good source of, again, omega-3s, and you're like, oh, why do I want omega-3s? Well, you know, that's why everybody takes fish oil pills, is for their omega-3s. And so why take the fish oil pills if you could actually just get it through your food? That's kind of my bias, right? So we're going to add in that. We're going to add in our 2 tablespoons of coconut. Like I said, if you're not a coconut lover, trust me, it added it. I didn't think I was going to like it either. So our coconut goes in. And I bought the unsweetened. I'd certainly buy the unsweetened coconut. You can buy any brand, works. Okay. And we're going to do the tablespoon of flax. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. And then a 1/2 teaspoon of my baking powder. Half teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. We just need small amounts. Now, I recommend that you make this recipe just the first time and see if you like it, okay? Before you double, I usually always double recipes, but I was like, yeah, maybe I'll make it first. Okay, and then it's a pinch of sea salt. I always like, it's a pinch, like how much is that? It depends on the size of your fingers, right? So here's a little pinch of that. And then we're going to add the cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. If you're not a cinnamon lover, you might want to go less. I have a sister that's not a cinnamon lover, but in baked goods she does okay, but you could go a little less. The thing is, anytime we can add in some spices, you know, they bring positive things into them, right? There's a lot of talk about eating cinnamon if you have type 2 diabetes, right? And so just know that, you know, that depends on the type of cinnamon, all right? Just know that you have to kind of be aware of that. Okay, so we have our two flours, our sugar, our walnuts, our coconut, our flax, our baking powder, baking soda, and our cinnamon and salt. And I'm just going to mix it up. Take my whisk and mix it up a little bit. Just to kind of mix it around. Like I said, the chunks of the walnuts are a little big. I could have chopped those up a little more, but it'll be okay. Okay, and then you literally need a half cup of any sort of plant-based milk, or you could use water. Water would work too. So if you are allergic, you might try the oat milk. Okay, that would be, and honestly, it worked really great. I used that for the first batch I tried, and so that was awesome. Okay, so we're going to mix that in. Now, I've tried this twice now, this recipe, and one came out perfect, the other one came out a little damp, so I might have to add a little more flour into it. This kind of depends. Because ideally, you want to roll them. We're going to kind of take them and roll them into little balls, and so this one might need a little extra flour. Otherwise, your hands are going to be a mess. So I'm going to add a little more oat flour to it. Maybe just half a teaspoon, or do a teaspoon. See how that goes. Actually, what I did when it was kind of too wet the last time, I just didn't roll them. I just plopped them, and they worked out fine. They just weren't as pretty as they might be. Okay, so I guess you can see that. And let's get this I could have used my spatula, but I didn't. And there you go. So I think that's what I'm going to do, instead of rolling them, I'm going to show you how I plop them, just because I don't have a sink up here. So what we do now is we're going to take our... we're going to scoop them out a tablespoon at a time. So I've got my tablespoon, and it says roll it into a ball and place it on the baking sheet. So I'm going to kind of scoop it out, as you can see, and I'm just going to kind of slide it onto here like this. Can you see it? Now it's not ideal because it's still kind of wet. I mean, I probably could add more flour to it, or more flax. Let's see how these first few turn out. And then, like I said, I think I will add a little more flax. So flax is like a binder in this situation, so it might do better to add the flax. Okay. And actually what I'm noticing is if it sits for a little bit, that might be what I'm doing. I'm brushing it. If it sits for a little bit, the flax is going to kind of soak it up. So add on your recipe, on your list, let it sit for a few minutes, okay? So that it'll kind of soak it up and it won't be as wet. Because I'll show you the difference here in a minute of how they look different. So already you can see, because it's sat, plus I added some, these two are pretty different, right? One's sort of coming out and one's sort of in, all right? So basically you're going to do this for the whole tray. And if you wanted to roll them, let it sit longer, and then you would roll them so that here was my hand, roll them like this, and then set them on. And then you want to, basically you're going to do a thumbprint in them. So we take our jam, and you take literally, let's see, what does it say? A half teaspoon, which isn't very much. And I don't know if you can see this, okay. We're going to push our thumb in, and then we're going to take our little teaspoon, half teaspoon of jam like this, and we're going to put it in that little indentation. Okay? So we're going to push it in, put it in. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? Where, you have, you can use your thumb, just to do it. I am using my other finger because I'm just putting a little bit less in. Simple as that. So you think about it, we've added some sugar in, but now with the jam, you're getting some fruit and some sweetness as well, all right? So basically, these, I do the whole tray, and these are going to go in the oven, okay? They're going to go in the oven. And with the magic of TV, okay, we're going to have some cookies made pretty fast, huh? So here they are. Let's say these were the baked ones. So these, again, they're not as beautiful as they could be because you can see the little difference. Some I rolled, some I didn't. Can they see those, Sean? Okay. Okay, oh, you can't see them. Okay, can you see? So these I just sort of plopped on, okay, and then these were kind of a little more, I rolled them. So you can see it does give it a little different texture, okay? So the recipe says to bake them at 350 for 30 minutes, and I found that to be too long, way too long, okay? If you like a crunchy cookie, then that's what you want to do. If you like it less crunchy, bake them less. I found 15 minutes was about right with my oven, okay? And so, pay attention to that first batch until you figure out what's going to work for you, okay? Now, so that's it. That's jammed out cookies. Now, what I want to point out is, so this is a treat, right? This is a kind of, it's pretty festive looking. You can, I don't know if you can see these in the container. If you put those on a nice festive plate, the first batch I made at home is, okay, it needs a better plate, but that you get the idea. It looks festive, and it's a treat, and yet you don't have any oil in it. You don't have any egg in it, so you don't have the cholesterol in it. You have a smaller amount of sugar, all right? And yet you're adding in, what are you bringing to it? You're bringing the walnuts and the flax, so you have some vitamins there. You have some cinnamon in it. So it's just, and it's gluten-free. So if you're avoiding gluten, you have an alternative for those guests that come that might be avoiding gluten. So that is it. That's the jammed out cookie. So are all of you going to make them for the holidays this year? I mean, because let's face it, the holidays are all about treats and baking and all those fun things. And yet that's why we all tend to gain weight over the holidays, right? Because we indulge in all that. So now you can actually indulge and maintain your health. Okay, are there any questions from any of you? I'll wait, have Sean bring them up for me. I see stuff in the chat, but I can't see them. Oh, I have one in here.
If you're pre-diabetic, can you eat that? I mean, it's less sugar, so it's probably...
Yeah, so the question was, if for pre-diabetes, can they eat this? And I would say yes. So with diabetes, it's all about, people always worry about eating too many carbs. And really, what I find with insulin resistance, with the clients that I work with, it's like, yes, we pay attention to that, but really what you want to watch is the saturated fats, because the saturated fats contribute to insulin resistance, and insulin resistance contributes to high blood sugars, okay, and contributes to type 2 diabetes. So you want to watch them both, but and the thing is, there's fiber in this, and eating something with fiber is, a positive thing. So you have some nuts with the fiber, you have some flax with the fiber, the whole grain flours, while they're refined, don't get me wrong, this is a treat. Do I want you eating this every day? No. Okay, but can you enjoy your life still, enjoy the holiday? Yeah, of course you can, even if you have prediabetes or diabetes, okay? Any other questions I don't see, Sean?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions here in the audience? Anything else? No? Okay, great. Thank you for joining me, and I want to say thanks to ACC for having me as well. I always loved coming here and seeing all of you and getting to talk to all of you. Have a wonderful holiday. Enjoy your family and enjoy the festivities. Bye, everyone. Bye.